Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. In recent veggie garden videos, I've been clearing garden beds and piling up all the organic material and doing nothing with it. In today's video, we're going to clear the tomato beds and make a start on the compost paths. We've had a pretty warm start to winter here, but this morning we did have a light frost, not enough to really knock back any of my nasturtium. Usually if we get a hard frost, the nasturtium gets wiped out. And it's usually the signal to me to start clearing all the beds. Well, with it being so green still, I've kind of put off ripping into some of these garden beds, but today's the day. I've got piles of organic material and I need to get going with these garden beds. As you know, I've also been holding off because these zinnias were still flowering beautifully, but they're really mostly finished now. My plan today is to clear this garden bed. I've already done the one behind me in a recent video. Now, I can't promise that I won't leave some of the flowering zinnias that might be on the edge, but I do hope to clear most of it. I have a couple of little plants. I've got a celery and some mizuna in, and also some bok choy. And winter hasn't hit my hollyhock plants, so I'm tempted to leave that one in this garden bed for the moment as well. I'm going to make a start with this nasturtium end of the garden bed, and it's got a big pile of buttercup in, which I really have to move out of here. I've got plenty of bees still buzzing around this nasturtium, which really makes me a bit upset about pulling it out. But I really do want to get this garden bed cleared so I can get the compost out of the paths so I can rebuild our paths. Oh, still little tomatoes in here. Now last week I did do some spot clearing of weeds like this, but I kind of didn't get all of them. I missed this one here, so it'll be good to get that out, but I will be putting that in the other compost, not in my path compost. Now just here is a pile of buttercup, which I'd like to get out as thoroughly as possible. So I am going to dig down into the soil and get those roots out. Normally I'd like to just chop them off and not worry about it, like in my kitchen garden. But this is my veggie garden, and I have to be a bit more mindful about these sorts of weeds. The reason for all my nasturtium lies right here. These plants seed very readily, and if the plants aren't knocked back in winter, then there's more and more of these little seeds that's getting around the garden and creating lots more nasturtium plants. Now the colour is great, but as you can see, they can quickly take over your garden if you let them. So rather than eradicate all these seeds, which I think is impossible, I will just make sure, well, I say that now, I'll try and get around the garden in early spring and start knocking back all the little seedlings when I see them. This is a particularly weedy patch of the garden. I tried to grow lettuce here, but I don't think there's enough compost material. So I'm going to clear out these weeds and hopefully heavily douse it with compost and try and keep on top of the weed situation. A lot of these weeds grow when the compost gets quite low. They seem to just take off a little bit more, especially these kind of dock plants. So I'll be clearing it and concentrate quite a bit more compost in this area. Now, something that I often get asked after using my sickle in one of these videos is, what is it and where do I get it? So this is what they call a long grass sickle, and I get them from Japanese Tools, which is an Australian company, but you can just order them online. And no, I don't get sponsored by them, although that would be great, but I just recommend them because I use them and I find that they're fantastic. Now, something that I want to recommend is tying up vines and tomatoes and plants like this with jute. Initially, I just used some electrical wire that I used out in my paddocks to tie it up, but you can't cut through that and you can't compost it either. So I'm finding with this jute, you can just chop that off and consider it the same as your tomato plants. It's just more organic material that you can compost, and it makes it really quick and easy to deal with tied up plants. That's one side just about complete. We're about to turn the corner, but I'm going to leave that pink beauty and all of those Mizuna plants and maybe a couple of these little hollyhocks. But next I'll get out this big long gone hollyhock stalk. Oh, all this electrical wire. I'll have to do something to get this off and just get jute all around the place because it's annoying. Now this zinnia, although it's still got some lovely flowers on it, it's time for it to go. Well, that's really made an impact on the garden. Won't take too long to get the rest out now. This side of the tomato patch I didn't clear because it had some onions that I was still grabbing sort of onion greens from, but I've still got another patch of those, so I'm just going to move it all on. And this radicchio can go as well. But that beautiful radicchio heart can go with some curly leaf endive into a salad. I don't really need to do this, but it's kind of part of the tidying up and mulching process, so if it's dry, it's really easy. With the garden beds all cleared, well, as clear as I'm going to do it anyway, we can have a look and see what the path's going to give in terms of compost. Now, this path wasn't anywhere near the depth of the compost path that I made a video about, and I'll leave a link to that video, so check it out if you haven't seen it. And that had quite a bit of compost that we could dig out and put onto the garden bed. Now this one I had to kind of go up rather than down because I didn't kind of trench out the path when I first started. So it's never going to be as much as that original compost path. So let's just have a dig in here and see what we've got to harvest. Well, there's a few worms. Now I'll just go down until I kind of hit what looks like soil. All of this is organic material. I did the same as that other path, but it just seemed to pile up rather than sink down. Now, I still haven't got to the soil here yet. There we go. We're just hitting the soil there now. So that's quite good material that we can add to these future tomato beds. I grabbed my bigger shovel now, so all I'm going to do for today is shovel out the path and put it onto the garden beds next to it for this part and for this one, and then we'll get them filled back in again. Now while I do it, I just have to be a bit mindful of how deep I go. I think you can sort of see that the organic material is sort of 10-15 centimetres, and then we hit the soil. So I don't want to be digging that up and adding it to the garden beds. I just want this to be organic material that I'm moving on top. And with it just being organic material, it doesn't matter too much if I just cover up this woody material. If I was burying this under soil, then that would be a different matter. But because it's just compost, it can just kind of go on top. Now I'm just going to load all this organic material into the pathway and kind of stomp it down to fit. This is all the old tomato plants that have been out for a little while, but they're kind of decomposed a little bit. I'm avoiding putting any weed seeds in this path if I can help it. However, there are probably going to be lots of zinnia seeds going in. Now, little seedlings like that, it's going to be quite quick and easy just to walk over the top of them if I don't want them. Or if they're plants that I could use elsewhere, I can always dig them out of this path down this track and move them to somewhere where they can grow. Just walking over the top of it helps to compact it down a little bit so I can fit some more in over the top. The two piles of organic material are now down between the two tomato beds in this compost path. Now what I will be doing during the week is ordering some more wood chips, and once I've got that, I'm going to be putting manure on top of this and then the wood chips on top of that layer. Then come next spring and summer, this path should be soaking up lots of moisture and providing lots of extra nutrients to the two adjacent garden beds. And late autumn next year, or start of winter, I'll be once again harvesting all the compost to be adding to the gardens. Well, that's one path done and two garden beds with extra compost. Now I'll clear this one and I'll just be adding it onto this side of the garden bed, because if you recall last week with our veggie garden video, I mulched all my perennials. Now, as you can see here, there's not much of an organic layer from the path. This side path I really didn't do anywhere as thickly as the rest of the garden, so we're not going to be getting as much. So whatever I do scrape up is going to go onto this garden bed here, but then I'll have to assess whether I need to add some more compost from our compost bays. There's something very satisfying about taking all these plants from the garden and putting them in this path, stomping it down so that I can add the manure on top of that. By the time I get the manure on, this will have settled a little bit, and then I'll get my wood chips on top and they'll be looking more like paths again. That's all I'm doing in the garden today. A bit of progress with some more compost paths. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.